Testing. To echo Stan's welcome to everyone here, the friends and the family especially of Peter Frick, who we have gathered to honour. Very good to see a nice turnout. I'm so sorry that many of Peter's friends and family couldn't make the journey down, but I believe there are quite a few watching on Zoom if I look at the screen here. So welcome to you all, the Zoom people as well. Amongst us here are 8 or 9 men, including Stan and myself, who served in their national service with Peter in the army and on the border. We are a group of about 50 men who have come together later on in life, formed our own veterans organization, and a couple of them are watching as well on Zoom. So hello guys, spread out across the country, greetings to them as well. And then we have a couple of overseas members, greetings to Paul Einstein in Ireland. Thanks Tammy. Tammy, our Zoom operator, is doing a trick. Hello Paul. Hello Kevin Suter in Canada. There's Kevin waving. Nice to see you. And down in All Black Land in New Zealand, we've got Dave B. I don't see his picture. Hello Dave. What time is it there? 4 o'clock in the morning? Dave, you know what time it is here? Yeah?
I think the audio switched off there.
Okay. It's Rugby World Cup champion time. So my brief is to talk about us, our group of veterans, and then later on other people will focus on the events on the border and on Peter. So just to say that the group of us, 50 odd men, we were called up to the army in 1981, virtually straight out of school. We had 1 or 2 people who were already there before us. And we were conscripts. It was a different era, a different time in our lives. And we trained together in Grahamstown, some of us in Oudtshoorn. And many of us went on this journey together for 2 years, spending the last year or so on the border together. Peter joined us after about a year up there. And I think some of you have seen the videos and so on, so you may be familiar with the story. It was a long time ago, nearly 4 decades ago. There were times of challenging times for us soldiers fighting up there. We bonded very tight in adversity. We became a tight group of brothers patrolling in the bush in what was then Southwest Africa and in Angola. And it's been a great joy for us all these decades later to come together again and to renew those friendships. As I say, there are 50 plus of us. So as a veterans organization, we have various support activities for our members. We have our annual national reunion, which is held in a different city across South Africa every year. The guys have informal get-togethers in the cities, ad hoc get-togethers, which is just the Cape Town guys or the Joburg guys. And the 8 or 9 men you see here, we form the nucleus of the Cape Town branch of the veterans.
Excuse me, not me.
I was getting to you. Colonel, you jumped the gun. Except for Stan, who has made the trip down from Port Elizabeth, especially to be with us. And thanks so much, Stan. I want to thank Dave Bosman as well, right in front of me over here. I've missed him many times because I was going to say, won't you stand, Dave? But it won't make a difference. I want to thank Dave for helping getting this day together and say thank you to Stan as well. This day has been a long time coming. When we first got together 4 years ago, and men started drifting in from across the country, across the world and joined the veterans group, naturally we reminisced about the old times. And one of the things that came up early on in our chats was this event in Oshikango at Alpha Tower, where Peter so heroically performed his deeds, and which were witnessed by so many of us, and which received great admiration. And so it was early on, years ago, that we started saying things like, you know, where is Peter? We can't wait for him to come into the fold. We lost contact with him. And he really should have got recognition before that day. And so it was with some sadness that we learned that he had passed away many years ago. And the next best thing for us was then to find his family. And it was a great joy to learn from Usi, Peter Westhuizen, right here, that he had bumped into Francois, Peter's brother, quite by chance, quite by accident. And Usi he said, you're a freak, any relation to Peter? And really it was within a couple of hours that I got a phone call from Peter to say, man, I've got information about Peter Frick. So, Francois, that was a great contact, and it was a great joy to make contact with you. And then the remainder of your family, and Dominique, I can't see you. Yeah, you're in the front row. Dominique, and then Sharon, Peter's former wife.
Zoom. She's on Zoom.
Sharon's on Zoom. I think I see her. Hello, Sharon. So, yes, this has been a long time coming, and for us, there's a tremendous feeling of well-being amongst us veterans, that we are able to honor one of our own in this manner. To you, the family and friends, it means a lot. I know that because many of you have told me. To us, it means almost as much, I want to tell you. I'm going to wrap up quickly. I want to take this occasion to also mention the members of our group who have passed away in the intervening years. Too many of them, I'm afraid, good men, some very brave men as well. My fellow soldiers here know who I'm talking about, and together with Peter, we hold them in our thoughts today. The other thing I wanted to say is, today is a celebration about Peter and his courageous activities on that day 37 years ago. But I was thinking about it, and my thoughts went back to the day which were very vivid to all of us. And I thought I would prefer to adopt a bit of a somber tone, because it was quite a big affair, that battle. And many men were wounded, some very badly wounded, and many people lost their lives. And you know, we were soldiers, and our enemy, they were also soldiers. They fought for a cause, we fought for a cause. We don't hold bitterness against them in their personal capacity. And from the members of SWAPO that I've met, they don't hold bitterness against us. We were their soldiers doing a job. And so I would like to acknowledge the sacrifice that was made on the battlefield that day by so many men. So that's it from my side. Thank you, Peter Frick's family and friends, for honouring us with your presence today, and welcome to the extended family that is our veterans group, which we call the Bush Brothers United. Thanks.
We were all thrown into this pot as conscripts in June 1983, 81, sorry, all at 6 side. And during, you first do your basics, so you do 3 months basics, and at that point in time, there's some divergent paths. And the divergent path that I'm referring to over here is myself and Dave and Peter, that left the platoons that we were involved with at 6 side, and we went to infantry school. And there we did the junior leader course, and which was a year, or just short of a year. And we came out of there as lieutenants. Dave was a second lieutenant, I was one, and so was Peter. In the meantime, Steve and the other guy sitting here had carried on with their training program and had either become corporals or lieutenants or section leaders and section commanders, and had already ended up being deployed on the border. They had a group of lieutenants that were platoon commanders, and one of them is over here today. Cassie, just put your hand up over there, please. Cassie sitting over here was one of the lieutenants that took the first grouping that we're talking about now, up to the border. Dave and I and Peter got back to Grahamstown in June '82, and we started giving basic training to the new group of conscripts or intake that came in. And that was for about 3 months or so, 3-4 months. At that point in time, Cassie and his fellow platoon commanders were all, Cassie, am I right if I say you were all permanent force members at that point in time? It was time for them to go and do a battalion weapons course. And if I'm not mistaken, it was a battalion mortars, Cassie. So those lieutenants were withdrawn from the operational area, and they obviously needed 4 replacements. And that is where myself and Dave and Peter and Roger Shaw came in. And the 4 of us were sent in September 1982 to a base called Okankolo, where we met up with the guys that are sitting here today, Alpha Company 6 Side. Cassie and we went on one patrol with the lieutenants that were there just to acclimatize ourselves to what was going on. And then Cassie, if I'm not mistaken, 3 or 4 of you withdrew at that point in time, and they went on their course, never to be seen again. I don't know what happened to you guys, but we never saw you again. So I'm not going to expand on the Okankolo part. It was a 3-month deployment that we had there, and I think we came back probably around about end of November, early December. And went on a little bit of leave, and our next deployment started early in January. And that is when we were deployed to a very small, one can only call it a fire base really, because it wasn't actually a base. Right on the Angolan border, the main road that runs from South Africa through to Angola, there was a border post over there, and there was a water tower. And the water tower, because it had a fence around it, was used as a secure area. And the secure area really consisted of a couple of buildings. There were 1 or 2 mortar pits and a couple of tents and so on. And the modus operandi there was that 4 platoons would be out patrolling at one point in time, and there was 1 platoon that was kept behind to protect the water tower and the 81mm mortars and so on that were stationed at that tower. And every 5 days or so, 5 or 6 days or so, there would be a rotation. The platoons would come in, we'd get rations, and they can go straight out, and then there would be a rotation. 1 platoon would rotate with the other and come into rest. So I now need, that is really the background to the event we're going to talk about now. And in 1983, there was an operation launched by the SADF. It was called Operation Phoenix. And it was a combined operation between the SADF and the Southwest African Territorial Forces. And it was in response to a major incursion by PLAN, the People's Liberation Army of Namibia, which included SWAPO. And their plan was to infiltrate from Angola through to the white farming areas of Sumeb and the more southern part of Ovambaland. So what they did, SWAPO's military wing, as I said, called PLAN, had created a specialized infantry unit called Volcano. And members of this unit had spent the second half of 1982, while we were at infantry school. They were training in East Germany, Cuba and Russia, and the instructors that they had, and they were regarded as the best PLAN soldiers that there were at that point in time. By January '83, which is when we arrived there, about 1,500 members of Volcano began their journey south from Angola through to those farming areas. They were formed into 14 companies of about 100 soldiers per company, and I think Steve mentioned, I think we were 150 in our company, and there were about 30 members per platoon. So the 14 companies, and their mission was that 13 of the companies were to cross the border and engage us and keep us busy. And the last company, the 14th company, would then engage those, wouldn't engage any forces, they would slip past and head south to hit those farming areas. So on the 13th of February 1983, the 13 companies headed into Kahoka land, Ovamba land, and into the Kavango. And Ovamba land, the second one I mentioned, was exactly in the center. Alpha Tower was in the center of Ovamba land, of that infiltration route. And the 14th company, as I mentioned, headed for the white farmers in Kamanyab, Uchu, Sumeg, and the Ochiwaranga areas. So Operation Phoenix started on the 15th of February, when those incursions first came to the attention of the SADF. And we were stationed right there, and it was our mission, Alpha Company 6I, were tasked to patrol from Alpha Tower, which, as I said, was only used as a fire base for replenishment and so on. And we had an area of roughly of about 600 square kilometers, about 30 kilometers by 20 kilometers, that we were patrolling in Angola to stem this tide and to try and disrupt this infiltration. Our mission was to find, neutralize, and destroy those planned insurgents that I spoke about. And as I said, it was achieved by having 4 platoons in the field and the rest, 1 platoon on standby at that base. So by the beginning of March, the planned soldiers in the main force were kept busy by the SADF, but had succeeded in attacking a lot of SADF outposts, engaged with SADF patrols in the area. They lay mines and they attacked and kidnapped civilians in that area. And there was quite a well-documented incident about St. Mary's Mission where Holland nuns and that were kidnapped. And Dave, you'll remember St. Mary's Mission. I think we went through there at one point in time. So, while these 13 companies were busy engaging us, the 14th company slipped through. But the SADF and the territorial forces, together with Kufrit, were hot on their heels. And they actually got about 50 kilometers from the area that they were going to wreak havoc in. And they were being chased, but by early March, they reached the farmlands and they managed to attack one homestead, and there were 2 people killed at that homestead. But by early April, SADF and the territorial force soldiers had caught up with them, and by the end of April there were no planned soldiers left in that 14th company. They were all killed. And they failed with their objective. The other 13 companies turned around and they went back into Angola. And the operation wound up on the 15th of April, which is roughly when I think we left Alpha Tower. The operation wound up, and in the 2-month operation, a total of 27 members of the SADF had lost their lives, and the Plan's Volcano unit lost 309 fighters in that period, in the 2 months. Civilian casualties totaled 33 dead, 161 kidnapped, and that were taken back to SWAPO bases in Angola. So that sketches the background to why we were there. We were positioned particularly at that base to stop that incursion. And we're not going to talk about it today, but there were many incidents and where we came into contact with these Volcano members and platoons and companies, and Dave had some hairy moments, I had some, and so did all the platoons, in fact. On the night of the 4th of February, I beg your pardon, the 4th of March, there was one platoon that was stationed at Alpha Tower. It was Platoon 5, it was Peter's platoon. He was in rest at that point in time, and that platoon was also served as a reaction force, so if any of the other platoons got into trouble, that platoon would be activated. Quite by chance, that evening, or that afternoon, another 2 platoons started returning to Alpha Tower. And what we would do is, it's probably about 10, 15, 20 kilo walk. We try and just wake up early that morning, walk back, get our replenishment, and rotate. So by the evening of the 4th of March, there were in fact another 2 platoons at Alpha Tower. So there were 3 platoons in total. Peter's platoon, my platoon, platoon 3, which was stationed, which had set themselves up probably about 200 or 300 meters south of the tower. And the other platoon was platoon 4. Alan's on Zoom over there. Alan's platoon also came in for replenishment. And they were stationed just to the east of the tower, also about 200 meters away or so. As they say, in the event that happens, there's a number of things that impact on that event. And one of the things, and you're all going to laugh now, one of the things that impacted on this event is that it was our company 2RC, Roger McCarthy, his birthday that evening. And we fortunately had quite a stock of beer at Alpha Tower. So we had a good party for Roger. And it was his, I don't know if it was his 21st, I'm not sure, but we had a good party that evening. Unfortunately, the platoons that were stationed just to the east and to the south of the towers I mentioned, and Peter's platoon weren't participants in this party because it was officers at the senior NCOs that was having this party. And I don't know, we probably wound it up at about 11 o'clock that evening, and we went to bed in our tent that was in the perimeter of the tower. And that is where the first problem started. And the first problem was that all the officers were sleeping in this one single tent instead of moving out and going to stay with their platoons where they should have been. So at about, I would say at probably about 2, 3 o'clock that morning, all hell broke loose at Alpha Tower. And my first thoughts was that we weren't warned that our mortarists were busy shooting a fire plane. Now, a fire plane is something that is done every now and again to test the mortarists and to make sure a fire plane is a predetermined grid that is set out for the mortarists to drop mortars on specific spots that might be infiltration or exfiltration areas in case you are attacked. And I was convinced they were shooting a fire plane. And within about 2 minutes, I realized I was wrong. There was no fire plane, and the minute I realized I was wrong is when a lot of tracer bullets raked through our tent. And we ended up, myself and Alan and Peter, moving out of that tent as quickly as we could. I'm not sure where Alan went, but he found some cover somewhere. But Peter and I ended up at the entrance gate in a mortar pit. And we quickly realized that we were under attack, and we were under heavy attack. There were RPG-7 rockets, there were mortars falling into the compound, mortars falling all over the place and so on. And it was a scene of chaos. So I'm going to leave that right now. I'm going to ask Wissy to come up and to have a chat to us about what he experienced. And Wissy was in my platoon, and as I said, they were probably about 300 meters or so, Wissy, 200-300 meters south of the tower. And unfortunately for platoon 3 that was lying there, everything that missed the tower ended up landing on platoon 3. So, Wissy, if you don't mind, if you can come up and just recount the events of that evening. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, you actually described everything so well. After such a long time, I see everything as if it happened yesterday. So, from our side, being in platoon 3, I just want to go back 10 days prior to this attack. We were attacked at the water hole. And what had actually happened, and I just must bring it in quickly, is that since the day that we arrived at the border, up until that afternoon, we thought that terrorists were rumored, because we never saw one, we never met one, there was just none. So we were really walking very casual, and a very, very big surprise hit us that afternoon. So that was still in Platoon 3's memory bank, very, very clearly what happens when you're being attacked. So we were, as Dan said, we were like 300 meters on the south side. So all the fire that were meant for the tower came over our heads as well. So fortunately, there was a very big tree that some of us were under. We were obviously spread out, and there were no facilities. There was no shower, nothing. There was a dam that we used to jump in and try and clean up as best as you could. And so me and one of my fellow soldiers were under this tree, and the next thing we just heard the air closing behind these rounds as they flew over us, and it's just like a clack, 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 clack. So we were all obviously fast asleep, and waking up, I was lying on my back, I just heard the sound, and immediately it was exactly what happened 10 days ago, 10, 11 days ago. So I immediately knew that something was wrong, and what I saw were green traces running over us. And then it was like all the leaves and twigs just came raining down out of this tree as these rounds were just flying through the tree and just loosening up everything. So it was, old Harold was next to me, and he immediately said, "Pussy, we are in big whatever." And so the problem that we were facing then is there's nothing that we could do. Because we knew that right in front of us were the tower and everybody around the tower, which is a very small compound. And then to the left and the right, there were other platoons. And so us as Platoon 3, our hopes were in the people in front of us, because we couldn't, I mean, it's pitch dark, so we couldn't see anything, we couldn't do anything. We were basically at the mercy of our fellow soldiers and obviously leadership, which I now learn, Stan, it's quite shocking what you guys did. But I must tell you, the guys at Platoon 3 also had lots of beer that night. I don't know where they got it from, but the locals came. No. He was one of the guys. So just getting back to our situation, and I was a MAGA, which is light machine gun carrier. So to me, you know, just lying there, sitting there, not being able to do anything was not on. So I turned around and I thought, I'm going to shoot to the south. Maybe somebody's going to attack us from the south, and they're going to hear that there's fire. So I just started shooting randomly there into the bushes, and obviously holding my firelights not to go to white, because our buddies was basically sleeping everywhere. It's like, you know, there's just nothing there. So it's open, felt, and nature as Africa can present it. So it was a real nightmare to see helpless people that are trained properly, and I tell you, we were trained properly, and our leadership, I don't know of one bad leader that I met in my 2 years in the army, and that's really to all you guys that were leaders. I think it was a job very, very well done, and you guys really did the best. So, but there we were, at that point in time, leaderless, and we didn't know how many people were attacking us, how many SWAPO guys, and what was going to happen next. So, and it's everywhere, you know, people calling each other, and, you know, obviously a lot of swearing going on at that point in time. And some of them jumping up out of the sleeping bags, and it was just chaos. It was just absolutely chaos. So, and then the next minute, just a massive bang, like I think about 30 meters from us, and that was 82 enemy mortar that landed there. But fortunately, thank God, there was a wall that was built for water to retain water, and that wall actually prevented the shrapnel to come to us. But what happened, a small little shrapnel hit old Harold just behind the eye. And he said to me, "Oh, see, I've been hit. I said, "No, man, what?" So, I mean, obviously we can't see, and he sort of felt there, and there was blood in his hand. And I said, "No, but you're fine, man. You know, just hang in there. You're fine. And nothing's going to happen." So anyway, and the shooting just went crazy. So our hopes were still really just basically on the guys in the front of the tower. What are these guys doing? So this is where Peter came in. And being a MAGA myself, you know, that machine gun was, I think, triple the volume of a normal R4, if not more. So, and I knew, because I was up the tower many times, I knew there was a MAGA gun on top of that tower. So that tower was, how high? Guys, help me out here. Like 30 meters or so. Yeah. So me as a MAGA, my hope was on that MAG gun that was supposed to be manned up there. And I couldn't hear or sense anything happening there. So unfortunately what had happened is the guys up there jammed this very important gun, because that was the gun that was shooting down from the height. And they could basically deal with the enemy fire. And that is where actually when the Sergeant Major, Sergeant Moose, he realized that there was nothing happening up there, and he started shouting, "Why is this MAGA not shooting from the tower?" And then Peter, with all this fire going around, so this is what makes this very, very significant. And I can tell you, a very, very brave young man. Remember, we're not talking of guys 40, 45, they don't worry about their lives anymore. And he decided, amongst all of everybody's being there, he was going to stand up and run with enemy fire flying everywhere and go up the tower. So when you go into the tower, then there's concrete around you, but I mean the RPG-7s also flying around, you're still at risk. And he went up that tower and unjammed that machine gun, and they could then start firing at the enemy with that machine gun. So I think I'm being fair today if I say that we don't know what could have happened if Peter did not do that. But I can only think that it would have been a lot worse. And remember, not one of us were killed that night, which in itself is a miracle. If you think about what happened there, and the firepower that was there, I mean, that 82mm mortar that landed, and it was a hard surface, it was not soft sand, because it was like a dry flayland where that mortar landed. So from my side, where I am, you know, I want to thank, and specifically Francois, I mean, it's your wood, you know, I want to tell you guys that Peter did a heroic thing. And it's something which I think everybody, all of us here that survived that night, will always look up at and say that this individual did something which turned the tide, in my opinion. And he really saved the night for us. Because I think once the enemy felt that firepower from up top there, I think things changed. And so to me, Peter is a real hero, was a real hero. And that's how I'm going to remember him. And I think I've already told my two sons about the story as well. And how an individual open-mindedly and calculated do something that can save a lot of people. And so I salute Peter.
Thank you, Rosie.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Rosie. So, if I can perhaps just, Rosie gave his perspective from platoon 3. As I said, there was a lack of command and control there, due to circumstances. And Peter and I ended up in this bunker that was just at the gate with our Sergeant Major Moves, who was also in there in his underpants, with his arms skinned, legs completely skinned off from crawling across the hard sand. And as Wesley said, we immediately realized there was a problem, that we could not deliver the firepower that we need to deliver there. And even if we could just get one machine gun going, it would make a difference. And I looked at Peter, Peter looked at me, and Sergeant Major Moves shouted, "Why is that mag gun not shooting?" And before I could say anything to Peter, he had already jumped out. And he was running across, he threw his rifle down and said, "Stan, here's my rifle." And for what it was worth, I started shooting to try and give cover fire, but you couldn't. It was indirect fire that we were getting, not direct fire. And he went into the tower and up the tower, and at that point in time there were rockets hitting the tower. And he got to the top, and within about 2 or 3 minutes the mag gun started firing from there. And as Wesley says, it did change the perspective completely. At that point in time we realized that this was not just a small event, that this was a well-planned and well-orchestrated event, and we could see the planned soldiers starting to mass coming down the road from the aluminum. 81mm has started firing as well, but they couldn't fire close enough. As I said, their firing plan was about a couple of 100 meters after that. And our 60mm mortars, which would have done the ideal job, the only mortars that started firing was from Peter's platoon on platoon 5 side. Platoon 4, I think, also fired a couple of mortars. Platoon 3 couldn't, because those mortars would have landed on us at the tower. And platoon 4, which was to the east of the tower, had already started being engaged by the enemy. They circled around the back of them, and they started firing on them. Platoon 5 was getting fire. So the only fire that we could deliver from the tower was that machine gun and indirect mortar fire. The machine gun started up, and I realized that Peter had worked magic over there, and we to this day weren't actually sure what happened, but I think the guys had the belt in the wrong way around in the machine gun. And the next thing that Sergeant Major Moose said to me is, at that rate of fire, that ammo is not going to last long. So, as I was saying to Dave the other day, I got out and I ran across to our ammo bunker, and he had a torch with him, which he threw to me, which I took. And I managed to find two boxes of 200 or 400 rounds, I can't remember. And the other thing I saw there was a barrel. And I took the barrel with me as well, because I realized that the barrel's going to heat up, and he's going to have to cool the barrel. I then ran up the tower. When I got to the top, it was this incredible light show. And it sticks in my mind today of traces and everything. Peter had everything under control there, the 2 guys lying next to him. So I just took the ammo and I threw it over. And I said to Peter, here's another barrel. Whether you use it or not, I don't know. I went down again, back into the bunker, and as I said, the guys are starting to mass. But fortunately, the firepower that we could deliver started deterring them, and they turned around and started withdrawing. And the problem they had was their withdrawal. They didn't have a good withdrawal plan, and they just started, eventually when we started getting the upper they started running, and that is when our mortars came into effect. The fire plan they had was perfect, and it was dropping exactly on those routes that those guys had. They had a first aid station that they had established in one of the old garages. That was a petrol station that had since been abandoned. They had set up a first aid station over there, and our mortars were dropping into that first aid station where they were trying to apply first aid to the guys that had been injured. So, as Wesley said, the key thing here that I'd like to speak about today is not a question of myself and Peter looking at one another and saying, okay, who's going to go there? He just shot up and he just ran. And with a second nature, whatever, it takes a brave man to run across an area that is being, with the amount of firepower that was going on there, to run to, even if it was only 20 or 30 meters. He could have just not have made it, but he made it. And that is why we're here today, to recognize that. And it certainly did turn the tide of that battle. And I'd like to close now with that and say that at the end of the day, I think there were 2 or 3 of the soldiers killed over there. 1 or 2 of them we did manage to find and gave medical attention to, and they were then fetched, I think the next morning, if I'm not mistaken, by helicopter to be interrogated and so on. And I want to go back to my description of the planned incursions by these guys. As I said, these guys were not in our normal South African terms palookas. They were well-trained volcano members, and we were just at the wrong place or the right place at the right time. And I think for Alpha Company 6I, we achieved our objective over there. We protected the tower, and after this event, I think 2 to 3 weeks after that, there were a number of contacts that we had with either the same group or maybe another group. We're not too sure. And as I said, by mid-April, the whole operation wound down, and we found ourselves being withdrawn from that area, and we went back, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know, I'm not too sure. I know so myself and Dave went back, and Alan, I think, may have stayed on. And the rest of Alpha Company stayed on until, I think, June, and when we were withdrawn about 2 or 3 months before that, the lieutenants. Once again, there was a rotation of platoon commanders. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that sketched the background to you and gave you a very good picture of what we were speaking about over here today. And without further ado then, I'd like to ask Dave to come up and to hand the certificate that we have over to Mrs. Frick. Where is Mrs. Frick?
It's going to be Dominic.
Right at the back. Mrs. Frick, if you'd like to come up here, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what we have over here is a Certificate of Bravery awarded to 2nd Lieutenant Peter Frick. On the night of 4 March 1983, while under heavy attack by the enemy at Oshikongo, Southwest Africa, 2nd Lieutenant Frick volunteered to climb Alpha Tower as it was being struck repeatedly by rocket fire. To activate a machine gun position on top of the tower, this courageous act helped turn the battle in favour of the South African Army, and the posthumous award is presented by the officers and men of Alpha Company 6I Infantry Battalion, who fought alongside him, and it's signed as well. We have a picture here taken that I took of Peter at my tent in Auckland Quarter, standing with his rifle, and also of Alpha Tower. Right, so just to close off this ceremony, I would like to ask the Honourable Marshal Swatshello if we could come up and please do the honours for us. Thank you.
Just need to put on my glasses quickly. It is a matter of civic and national pride that the call to remembrance originated in Cape Town. The gathering will stand for the sounding of the last post, followed by a 2-minute silence, followed by the sounding of reveille. Veterans are reminded to perform their respective salutes during the sounding of the last post and to terminate the salute on command. Please be upstanding. Veterans attention. Parade salute. Sound last touched. Drop salute. I shall pass through this world but once. Therefore, any good thing I can do, or kindness I can show any human being, let me do it now. Let me not defer it nor neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. In memory, in honor, in silence do we pause, our humble tribute to those who died for freedom's cause. By their sacrifice and passing, when comrades too went to rest, moths and veterans bow, we will remember them, of our kind the best. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Thank you, you may be seated. The sound engineer will now sound the lament flowers of the forest. Thank you.